Thank you very much, Matt, and thank you for those of you who are attending. I thought it would be a good use of our hour this month to go over some current issues with LEED credits. So what we'll do is we'll take an overview, we'll look at individual LEED credits and how green or not green they are. LEED is, of course, wildly successful. Over 12,000 projects have been certified. I understand over 20,000 LEED for Homes projects have been certified, and it's been a great help in our industry. As specification writers, as architects, as building product manufacturers, there are some things we need to remember. Many of you have seen this slide before. I've used it a number of times. Even sustainability is a point of view. If you're downriver from this dam, then you're glad the dam is there. And if you're in a canoe, you have a totally different perspective on the world. So this is not Photoshop. It's a loose gate, and it just points out that it depends on where you are as to what is sustainable. The big hurry that we really do need to hurry, though. That's a real statistic on the screen. 5 million people moving to cities every month, many of them in the poorest countries of the world. We have to learn how to share air and water and energy. We need to learn how to share the planet, and as such, I really do believe that LEED is essential. Worked on many projects, I think even as many as 20 platinum projects at this point. But what you've seen before from LEED is market transformation. They're pushing against some pretty entrenched interests. They're pushing against what we can be. The nice thing about LEED for me as a spec writer is that the documentation is predictable. I know what I need to achieve a credit. I know when I've achieved it. I know that some credits are achieved in design and some in construction. LEED is very participatory. It's amazing how many knowledgeable people are volunteering on their committees. And of course, we really need to stop the greenwashing, the people who come in and tell us their products have already changed the world or will earn us 20 credits and that they're LEED certified. And but also the nice thing about LEED is that multiple solutions are available, and one of the things I'd really like to stress is that you don't have to get every credit. There are times when you don't add carpet to a project just to get the credit. I think we know all that. So rather than starting with problems, I just want to go over quickly some what I feel are real solutions. That energy model is amazing in informing the building systems, the energy efficient mechanical systems. And until you do that energy model, you don't really know where you are in your certification model. We had a project this morning where when the energy model was finished, they'd sort of promised 7 points. We got 2. The project is only supposed to reach certified level, and looking for 5 other credits is now very difficult. But until you do the energy model, one, of course, you don't know where you are with regard to LEED, but it's also the bigger picture of where are you and the amount of energy that the building is going to consume. Energy efficient building envelopes are really in the fore these days, and in many states, owners are both public and private commissioning both systems and enclosures. It's really making sure that the building is going to perform over time. You've all heard that over 20 years the cost of the building is 5%. The other 95% is the salaries of the people who work there. You just don't have the chance to go back and fix that air barrier. Water use reduction, can't stress that enough. Indoor air quality, isn't that what it's all about? And don't forget the insulation in your dew point checks. We've talked about these things before, but insulation is clearly the best bang for your buck. Now, the problems that I have in our office with LEED specs is that most LEED projects come with a LEED consultant or someone in the design firm who's in charge. You know, I think there are far more firms that have people dedicated as LEED administrators than there are firms that have specification writers. So we're outnumbered. Some people haven't had their basic CSI class in clear, concise, and correct, and so they feel they need to say something 6 or 7 times. They need to repeat the VOC limits everywhere. They need to just completely out of control. We've seen that before. The conflicting and unenforceable requirements, you know, when you say that you want your wood doors within 500 miles and you want them to be FSC certified, you know, but you picked a veneer that it just can't happen, it just becomes basically a fake spec. And a long time ago I learned that the last thing I wanted to do was confuse the contractor's estimator. You know, we'll work on the job for the year. The contractor will get a month to bid it. The subcontractor will get a week. They'll spend 2 hours on it. And if the spec confuses the estimator, if money is thrown in for, you know, extra sustainability items that aren't necessary or aren't appropriate, it's a real problem. I've talked to many people, perhaps you have as well, that use the spec to go product fishing. Okay, I'd like an entrance mat that's made next door with 100% recycled content, and well, by the way, that entrance mat was never going to be used for the credit anyway, but let's gather the data. We'll build up a database. I think there are better ways to build up a database than on the backs of the subcontractors and contractors who are doing their best to get a job built on time. Specification, you know, that's the perfect LEED product right there. The paper mache roofing, it's 100% recycled content, maybe 100% recyclable. The warranty is until it rains. We can't have specification. People are going to be living in our buildings. Now, you know, there's also talk of a lot of red lists. Red lists for a reason. You know, red lists generally meaning what chemicals am I not going to use, and perhaps you've seen the environmental building news pieces where they took everybody's red lists and mapped them, and there were a few things in the middle, and most of them had a tendency toward their own particular industry. If you're General Motors and you're trying to paint your cars and you have silicone sealants in your paint shop, the paint won't stick. Okay, so that's a really good reason not to have silicone sealants in your paint shop. If you're running a hospital and you've got patients who are already immune suppressed, in many cases, there are products that you just don't want. We went recently through an exercise with a group of 5 hospitals where they decided that you know, the rubber flooring was better than the polished VCT flooring when they looked at how the cost of cleaning, the effort involved, the safety to patients. You know, people have preferences for a reason. Google worked on some Google projects. They're very concerned about what they're exposing their personnel to, and so they have strong preferences and are a market leader. Very important to all of us. The same way with Walmart. Now, maybe the Walmart red list is has a profit focus to it, but you know, Walmart feeds like 15% of this country. They're by far the largest company. If they have things that they're not doing, whether it's things they don't want to get sued for, better ways to do packaging, better ways to do shipping, they're really moving our industry forward, and so they can defend their red lists. When I worked on Masdar City over in Abu Dhabi, things like asphalt and PVC ended up on the red list, very high principles, and then it came to be, okay, so what are we going to build the roads out of? So if you have a reason and you have goals, you can move these things forward. But you have to have that reason. You know, this is a slide that I've shown before, and it's the life cycle of a project. Phil Bernstein from Autodesk developed this, and it just shows that we have to remember, we have to look downstream, that the spec is a tool that we're using for a very short period of time in the construction cycle, but those products that we're specifying and those certification programs that we're after are really pretty critical. So when it comes to product selection having consequences, and again we'll get to some of the specific LEED credits, but to me performance is a sustainable attribute, and LEED doesn't always have a way to measure that, but you and I need to, our firms need to, the contractors need to, the building product manufacturers need to. It's that paper mache roof. So just quickly, maybe you're seeing this. You've put up sheet flooring over concrete slabs recently and watch it blister, and then they tell you that if the relative humidity is under 75%, you can use your old any adhesive you want. If it's 75 to 90% relative humidity in the slab, you need one of the super glues. And if it's over 90%, you probably need a moisture mitigation system, which, you know, could be $4, $5, $6 a foot. So we have to pay attention. The greenish sheet flooring won't stay on a wet slab. Relative humidity and sodding, I think if you're dealing with popular sidings like zinc or phenolics, many of them have to be used in a rain screen situation. Because if the relative humidity on both sides isn't the same, you can get premature warping or corrosion. So, you know, what does that have to do with sustainability? It has to do with our buildings being there when we need them. Vapor retarders in renovation projects, older cities like Boston, where people are moving into old mill buildings, and you know, all of a sudden these buildings are air conditioned and they're adding vapor retarders in the exterior walls, and the mortar starts, these 100-year-old buildings just starts falling out in buckets from the outside of the building because it can only dry out one way, whereas it used to be able to dry out two. NFPA 285 code compliance, that was a well-kept secret in most of the country for 7 or 8 years when it was in effect, but now most of the building inspectors realize and enforce that just about everything in our exterior wall assembly needs to be fire retardant or tested at the NFPA 285 code level. You can still use mineral fiber, you can still use extruded polystyrene, the air barriers now are fire retardant grade, but it's something that you don't want to deal with in the middle of the job. You know, recent changes in codes to the spray fireproofing, where medium density fireproofing needs to be used on high rises, and the low density isn't suitable anymore. So if we can take a step back and just say, what's a spec? So here's Mars Climate Plus, and the architect has told me they'd like to specify this product from USG. They're the LEED credits, the features and benefits, and then I only get one page. Of course, we know that you have to turn to page 2 of the product literature, because there are 3 edges and 7 panel sizes and 7 grids, and usually I'm not engaged as the designer of the project, so it'd be better if the designer picked these, although in the absence of good information, I'll probably specify a middle-of-the-road product here, and then the conversation later can be whether or not we're not going from 0 to the product that's ultimately selected. We're going from the middle range to there. So these attributes, these performance attributes, many of them are affected by LEED. Some are, some aren't, but they're very critical to the manufacturers of the ceiling tiles, and so they register them. If I want to put this in my favorite CSI 3-part spec, There it is, Mars Climate Plus 86985 tile and fine line DXF, DXLF grid, and then some equals by Armstrong or certaintied, which is never a simple matter, and then the performance criteria. So we capture this information from the building product manufacturers. We put it in our specs. We potentially put it in our BIM models. There's no limit to the number of columns you can have in a BIM model. Most people wouldn't take the time and aren't being paid to enter all those attributes, but they really do make a difference if with the different certifications, whether it's energy analysis or R value or indoor air quality. When this information is in the model, we can be more predictable. Things can predict. And then the sort of ultimate nightmare slide here that shows it's not just a ceiling. There are keynotes and there are master format numbers and uniformat numbers and cost codes and 7 LEED credits that this can contribute to. So if we're doing our job rigorously, this is where we're going to end up. Hopefully the machines will speak to us in English instead of code. And again, maybe you see this on your projects, but this is out of a Revit model, and we get a schedule of an item by code, manufacturer, product name, color, size, and then as a spec writer I can mark that up and without seeing the model, give it back to the architect to let them know where I need more information to actually make a spec work. So it's about looking downstream. Now when we come back to the specific LEED credits, we know that there are 8 LEED programs. Only 8? I think that's the right number. And if you look at the different prerequisites in the credits, they're different. They're different from program to program. So in our specs, you know, and the ones that are sort of Microsoft Word based, we just use colored text and say this is for LEED NC and this color is for LEED CI and this is for chips, or this is for school, because the language is similar but it's not the same. And if you're ultimately trying to make sure that you earn the credit, you need to have the right language. So let's take a few minutes and go through some individual credits and some of the things that we see. And again, I'd be glad to know what other people see as well. But we know if we have our solar reflectance index at 79 or higher for our roof, we're going to get that LEED credit. And the question comes up sometimes in northern climates, you know, why white? There are some people who are fairly vocal about believing that black, that you want some heat gain. But I guess the real issue is that it's sitting on top of 5 inches of insulation. So how much, isn't it really better to reflect that solar radiation back? Other people have said that you know, white turns to gray in most cities, and I think if that's where you are right now and you look out the window, you'll see a lot of it sort of seems all the roofs are this sort of dusty gray-black color. With white roofs, every now and then you have to remember where they're being used. I was actually in a hospital room once. Right outside was about a half acre of white roof, and I couldn't open the windows any time of day because it was blinding. It was and so the beautiful view and the white roof. So you have to decide, is this a credit you want for your project? You don't have to have every and can't get every credit, but it's a matter of picking ones that make sense. I've said before that neither PVC nor TPO nor modified bitumen are edible. so you can decide what's the right performing chemistry for your project. In most cases, there's always an option for attaining this 7.2 credit. And by the way, since we're talking about the roof, please don't forget about the insulation. You know, the R5.0 for the extruded polystyrene, or the R5.5, maybe 6 for the polyisocyanurate. What is it you're doing, and which of those fit into the sustainable choices as well? We're seeing most of the roofing manufacturers offer whole systems now because I'm told they make as much money off the insulation as they do off the membrane. So the next credit, and again, we're just hitting the credits that we see as specifiers most often. These are often credits that need to be enforced during construction as opposed to design. The white roof is, of course, during design. Construction waste management, we've put it in every spec we've produced for over 10 years, and it always provokes some sort of discussion. There's a project, one area where they said it was going to cost $30,000 to throw the things away because they'd just been planning on, or recycling them because they'd just been planning on throwing them in a field. But at least in the Northeast, and I'm told in the West and in the South, waste management is a profit center, getting things back out of the waste stream and into production again. And again, in the Northeast, our landfills, many of them are closed, so you almost don't have a choice. One of the issues on the construction waste management credit is getting started early. You know, you start doing these early packages for you know, site utility relocation and early excavation, and sometimes some of the LEED credits are still floating around. You know, just as you have a choice of where is your LEED boundary, as long as it's the same for every credit, you can start your LEED project at a prudent time. Some people will take a building down and then start their LEED project. Some people will want to include that. So you have to think these things through, and you have to get those waste hauler receipts, because if you've decided that you're after this credit for 50% or 75% or the 95% to get the innovation credit, but you haven't paid attention during the site relocation or the utility relocation, you may lose the credit. So it's one of these ones that really is pressing, and you know, that's why CSI in Division 1 uses is a good way, an essential way to get organized. Now, that recycled content credit, how many people chase after this? You know, there is a bias. It's sort of biased toward the metals and the things that you can recycle. It's kind of hard to start with recycled wood or start with recycled brick, because you know, wood and brick have very low embodied energy. You just make them and use them. You transform them from clay or from trees, whereas metals, even when steel or aluminum are reprocessed, there's still a huge amount of embodied energy. So, you know, you might build your whole building out of wood, and it has nothing to do with recycled content, and then you just sort of let this credit go. You also have to make sense. The synthetic drywall, the drywall, the gypsum that's captured at all the coal-fired power plants in the U.S. or many of them. Well, if you're in California, you're way more than 500 miles away from those plants. There aren't any coal-fired power plants in California. So why are you going to ship your drywall that far? You know, I was told by some people in the drywall industry that once you ship synthetic drywall 12 miles farther by truck than if you were just using regular drywall, that the embodied energy savings goes away. So you have to try and make sense of things. If you're doing a LEED commercial interiors, you may need the synthetic drywall because you're really hunting for credit sometimes. So my personal opinion of the recycled content credit is it's paper heavy for a point you can't lose. Never came close to losing this credit. We all know that a little bit of fly ash in the concrete, which is cheaper than the Portland cement, and the 90% in the structural steel and the 50% in the studs, that if you use your Division 1 to implement your plan, and the contractor updates these credit plans, then you can always get this credit. But if the goal is really certified and you're already there, it's a credit that you don't always have to chase. Next favorite is the regional materials. Now, there really are efficiencies in manufacturing, and there really are efficiencies in transportation. The rail people have been, what is it, a ton, 400 miles on a gallon of gas or something like that, or a gallon of an equivalent piece of fuel. So maybe I do want all my windows made in Wisconsin. You have to decide that while it's nice that there are regional materials, that you have to draw your own conclusions. We could all have zero net energy buildings and no centralized power plants, but I don't think there are enough solar panels or geothermal well material available on the planet if we chose to do that. We're at 7 billion people. We're headed to 9 billion people by 2050, with 80% of that growth in the 20 poorest countries, and so efficiencies. It's okay. You can almost, sometimes it's increased project costs, but it's paper heavy for a point you won't lose if you are predictable. It doesn't do a lot of good, in my experience, to argue with the structural steel fabricator who submitted a price to then ask them to confirm their extraction and their manufacturing within 500 miles. It sort of is, or it isn't, and you need to let people know that before you go out to bid. So the certified wood credit, FSC versus SFI, the members are going to vote to decide. You need to research whether or not that white oak veneer, AWS grade AA is really available FSC, or whether there's only one log in the world that meets that criteria. So it goes back to the impossible or unenforceable credit. So what we usually see is that you target your 50%. A lot of projects you can get it with your doors, or you add your doors and your millwork. You skip the plywood that's in the floor of the elevator. It's really kind of irrelevant. And again, sometimes people, if they can't get to 50%, we'll let the credit go altogether. Maybe 40% is okay. You won't get the credit, but maybe it's what you wanted to do. I do believe that both FSD and SFI have very sound principles. If a major logging company chooses not to do chain of custody for the 100,000 logs they deal with each day, well, that's their business decision. And when you put FSC in your spec, that's your business decision. But remember, you need that chain of custody, and don't let one person fall out of the loop. So, I realize this is death by PowerPoint. There are a lot of text screens here, so just the briefest of interludes. So here's our beautiful planet, and here are the clouds, and here are the oceans, and everything's terrific. And then here's a day when there are no clouds, and you see how much of our planet you can't live in. You can't live in the desert. You can't live in the rainforest. So many of us live near near the water. Vast areas of this planet are getting hotter and hotter, or wetter and wetter. I'm not certainly the only one noticing how strange the weather is, but our buildings, maybe you and I get to deal with buildings, so those are the things we have to fix. I can't fix the desert, but maybe I can fix a building or two, and if we do it all together, we can make it work. Okay, back to death by PowerPoint. EQ credit 3.2, indoor air quality and occupancy. That has a schedule impact. That always has a schedule impact. That running around, what are we going to do? Can we move the furniture in? Can't we move the furniture in? So you just have to decide whether you want to go after this credit. I think the EPA said that the primary contaminants or things that affect indoor air quality are the what comes in through the basement or ground floor slab, what comes in on your feet through entrance mats, and what comes in on cleaning supplies. Then we buy our furnishings from wherever we buy them, or relocate them, and then of course there's people and food and perfumes. It's really a tough problem. See, in California, they've been trying, all their furniture has these Cal 133 or various fire tests, and so there's just a lot of chemicals pumped into these things. Other people are saying, well, gee, why can't we just encapsulate the foam with a fire retardant barrier? No fire ever started in the middle of the cushion. But I'm told that although it's gone to the legislature 4 times, the chemical industry is, bringing their experts to bear and saying, no, we have to continue to use these chemicals. So every time you sit down on a chair in the United States, there's a little puff of some brominated something forever. So, it's people trying to do the right thing, different perspectives. We've seen so many of the green label products, the systems. Everyone's telling us they have to. If green label is okay, green label plus. Everybody has their, and it's just all the way around the world, and it's good because it shows how much activity there is, and everybody's taking a step forward, which is the right thing to do. But as a specifier, then I get to the indoor environmental quality credits 4.1, adhesives and sealants. Now, remember that what LEED really wants and what they're after is low VOC content. So the paint in the can or the adhesive in the tube has to meet certain criteria. But once it comes out, is it going to even something that has low content can interact with other materials, combine on the job site. So is it low? Would it be better if it measured low emitting over time, or low content? And there's some people with serious scientific discussions on that. The moisture content in the slabs we talked about before. Those old adhesives used to be able to hold that stuff down like nails. The concrete would come apart. It used asbestos fibers to hold itself together, and that proved to be the wrong decision over time. But we need to make sure that the products that we're picking, adhesives and sealants, are appropriate for the job. In our case, there are 3 equal or 5 equal products in the spec. They all meet the LEED requirements. We take the submittal, but it's only if it was a substitution would we need to go back to Division 1 to check. Usually we require that the adhesives and sealant product submittals from the manufacturers list the LEED allowed limit and the LEED and what the product actually is. And I see that I think Sherwin-Williams now even has that on their product literature as to what does the product have and what's the limit, just to show that they're in compliance. Moving on, very close to adhesives and sealants, paints and coatings. Low VOC versus zero VOC is the low VOC paint at $16 a gallon, or the $32 a gallon zero VOC paint, which is going to provide the best performance. Some people feel that again, it's the issue of low content versus low emitting. The LEED requirements for the Southern California Air Quality Management District, I believe, manages content. CHIPS is more focused on lower emitting over time, and so you have to decide what's right for your project, and you can comply with both. But it's performance versus cost versus credit, trying to figure out what it is that you need. The flooring systems, when the floor score requirement came out, it seemed that it was very California based, and we weren't able on the East Coast to meet the credits. The manufacturers were really rushing to comply. There's still a lot of single attribute selection when it comes to flooring. I want a flooring that's non-PVC, or I want a flooring that's virgin rubber or recycled rubber. The issue about the flooring is about the performance of the floor. Does it work? It's beat up all the time. What is it you're going to use to clean it with? And some of the designers, it's my understanding that if you make tile flooring or wood flooring, you don't need that floor score approval that Dow Tile and others said, look, we've tested, we make thousands of products. All the tests come up the same. It's obvious, and I understand that that's acceptable. So again, it's about the flooring performance. It's what is it that you're going to make work. Composite wood, it seems to have a cost impact. It seems to get bounced out of projects. A number of the agri-fiber plants have shut down. I think Masonite bought a number of them. There's some question when you're using composite wood in a regular commercial agri-fiber products that they're not quite as durable. They haven't gone through as many years of testing and performance. If you're using them from cores, it's affected some of the finished warranties. I think industry has kind of solved that now, but you have to remember you're looking for an installed product that's going to work. So, what's CSI been doing? Paul Bertram is the immediate past president, very focused on green format. Today, the green format, the PDF, is a wonderful document on the website, CSI website, for free. The green format maintenance task team is moving forward to see how that works. Green format, the website, and the development hasn't continued on that, but it doesn't mean that the underlying information isn't relevant. So CSI is, I think, understands sustainability as a group and has put some things together, even this practice group. So again, I think those of you on the line know that you can go back a year, maybe two, and see some excellent presentations that go in much more detail on things like FSC or flooring or LEED or water or concrete paving. So CSI works because it has its formats. Again, at the end of this presentation, my email is there. If anybody wants this PowerPoint, I'd be happy to send it to them. Master format, CSI's flagship. Classification by work results, the uniformat, national CAD standard, all these things. So CSI works toward organizing our environment, our construction environment, so as we move things across phases, project, we know what processes we're doing. Are we doing conceptual design? Are we doing detailed design? Are we doing cost estimates? And these are where the formats are located. And although everybody on the call here may say, oh, I know about that, I know about section format, master format, green format, maybe I know about the National CAD standard, even OmniClass. Many people don't, and many LEED administrators don't, and so it's up to us to show them that because there is this structure, we can be predictive when it comes to LEED credits and get what we want out of our projects. The old standby slide from one of the early manual of practice. Okay, we've got our project manual, we've got our procurement documents, we've got our construction documents, and we've got our contract documents, and this isn't the place to really go through and do that, but it's here, and it's good to show people that we're organized. And then finally, drilling down to the bottom layer, when we've got our CSI section format, we know that Part 1, Part 2, Part 1 general, Part 2 products, Part 3 execution is really what's critical. And we'll never use all these paragraphs in any one given spec, but they're there, and they're there for you to communicate what the designer's intent is if you're the specification writer, so that the contractor's estimator doesn't make a mistake. So, you know, when it comes to starting to wrap up here, you know, what is driving your spec? What are you using as the basis of your spec? Is it moving you closer toward LEED, further away from LEED? Are these products in your specs, whether or not it's a LEED project? We don't have two sealant specs. We don't have two paint specs. We have, you know, the lower VOC and lower emitting products make perfect sense, especially the ones that perform at the highest level. So if your owner is driving your specs and they're telling you what you know, if you've got a hotel owner, and you've got that communicating door spec that's in their master specification because it has to have a SDC of 53 because of all the complaints, is that could potentially arise, you know, between people in adjacent hotel rooms. Is that door FSC certified, or is it not? Are you going to add it if it isn't? You know, many of the owner specifications, the LEED is an add-on, not a default. Others, it's just the other way around. You know, your own office master specification, it's a difficult thing to keep up to date. It's the most prevalent type of spec master that's out there because you've got it in Word, you've just worked on it, you haven't built the building that it relies on or that it specifies, and so there haven't been any problems. So the office master spec is a popular source for specs, and of course you need to get your LEED stuff in there. You need to get your Division 1 organized so that you can include in there your action plans for the various credits. Some of our projects will, in Division 1, when we'll say what credits we're going after, because the scorecard is there, we'll list what sections. So the contractor can look and see that the FSC credit is only intended to influence the wood door section. But you certainly wouldn't leave it out of the wood door section as well in order to get what you want. The National Master Specifications, BST, SpecLink, AI, Master Spec, the UFGS, many of them have green language, green products. Manufacturers' product specifications, you know, I'd like to know what chemical we're using to make green paint because it must be in short supply because everything is green. LEED certification, again, you can go back to your previous projects, you can see what's worked. Once you've used the LEED online to document your regional materials or your recycled content, that's maybe where you start for your next project, and you build up your own formal or informal database. But ultimately it's about high performance buildings, and LEED has it wouldn't be happening. LEED is such an elbow in our back to move us forward that the dialogue is incredible these days. There isn't a newspaper you can pick up that there isn't something going on. It's the public's awareness is up, and they expect us as architects to have our awareness up. So it's about high performance. LEED is one measure, one predictable measure, and then you need to decide for yourself what else is going on. Just some online resources. You can go to CSInet.org to see the practice group pieces, the U.S. Green Building Council's website for LEED, of course, the wholebuildingdesignguide.org, 7 million pages of free documentation, 300 standards organizations, Federal Green Guide for specifiers, buildinggreen.com, Environmental Building News, great source, many articles. You need 7 articles on porous paving. That's where you go. Buildingscience.com, you know, how do you build with wood efficiently? What's the advanced framing techniques to use less wood? You can find an article that says ventilate your attic and maybe another one that says don't, but it's quite good. USGDesignstudio.com is a manufacturer. They've got all their LEED data there. It's nice because they also have their selector tool, so if you need that 12-foot high partition and you want to stay with a 4-inch stud, what's the spacing going to be, or what's the STC? Arcat.com, like Suites or Reed. Arcat has manufacturers who self-certify, their green attributes, about 850 free specs, 3-part format there, BIM objects. KalinAssociates.com, our website, there's some free position papers there on BIM and green, and a free spec checklist, and short form specs for a few hundred green products. So they're there if you want to poke around, or you can of course just always hit Google. We see ourselves as specification writers being an important part of the building team, and we really are, but as we move from print to looking at models to someday being able to grab that model and shake it and get information out, that's where we need to move to. We really can do anything we put our mind to. No, I don't have a clue why somebody decided to crochet a tree, but they did it because they wanted to. So if these 105 million buildings we have in this country, the 60 million buildings that are more than 50 years old, we're going to be busy, and we have to be, because it's a big planet, and to me, LEED and CSI and other organizations give us a unique chance to talk together. So that was what I wanted to go through today, resolving conflicts between LEED credits, product selection, and specs. Matt, if anybody has a question they'd like to address to the group or me.
Sure. We have 6 of them that we've been lining up here. And actually, one just came in from Mosin. Please note that the slides as well as the recording of this will be available probably in a couple of days through the CSI website at CSInet.org/sustainability. So please note there, or you can email myself or Mark after the presentation. I'll put both of our emails in the chat feature to let us know. But going on the questions that we have here, going back a little bit here, first one, I have a couple of them here from Martha and a couple here from I'm going to say it's Kemtiet. Sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. First one is it fair? Project has descriptive spec, so the architect engineer tell us that it is the contractor's job to provide product having COC. Can you advise on that situation?
Right. If I can rephrase the question, in other words, if the question is, can you just tell the contractor to buy the low VOC items? Well, the drawings are the quantitative representation of what you want to build, and the spec is the qualitative. So you need 3 sealants. Do you want the sealant made out of paper mache that that won't work when it rains. So, you know, the honest question to that, you know, to that is, I think the architect, the same way they have an obligation for code compliance, that's not the contractor's job, they have to find a solution that gets the owner the building they want by picking products that meet the owner's requirements. And so in construction manager projects, maybe you can do it in collaboration, but it's really about the spec, including what you want. You can get LEED Platinum without saying LEED in the spec. It's about what you ask for.
Alrighty, thank you there, Mark. Going to the next one here. Martha just wanted to, her practice, and I think just wanted to kind of pass it along and also maybe get your feedback. She just specifies the chip's prospective content for selected products rather than use the performance method. I don't know if you have anything you'd like to say on that.
Well, if the marketplace knows how to comply with or provide products to a standard like chips, or, you know, the United Facilities Guide specs, you know, the governmental specs don't have manufacturers in them. So, but if you're going to leave the manufacturers' names out, you better put in all the attributes that you want, because you could say you want a non-PVC flooring, but it also has to have a certain durometer hardness. It has to have maybe a certain color. It has to have a certain level of content. So it just depends on you know, whether you're going to analyze the product when it comes in from the contractor's submittal, or whether you're going to do that when you put a project out to bid. If it's a public bid project, I suggest that you really have to solve the problem so that all the bidders are bidding the same thing. If it's privately bid and you can sit there with the contractor and the subcontractor and weigh the pros and cons and the different costs, that's terrific. I mean, if you can do it.
Alrighty. So we have here clarification to the last question previously. I may have just been misheard from me. Was wondering about whether it was fair with the architect engineer as it related to the COC, the chain of custody, not VOC.
Oh, I'm sorry. It must be my old ears. The chain of custody, means and methods are up to the contractor, and that chain of custody, I agree, is the responsibility of the contractor. That you want to see what the chain of custody is, but you don't have to be predictive, because if they can buy their millwork or their doors from, you know, one of 6 or 7 sources, all of those would have a different chain of custody grouping. So yes, in that I do agree that it's fair to have the contractors submit what it is that they're planning on, and asking each of the people in the supply chain for that product, just what's your number.
Okay, great. So going through a couple of these last ones here, as we're getting low on time. If anyone has any additional questions, please just send them on to us, and Mark and I can forward them appropriately following today's presentation. But Martha brings up that she's found in the past, I don't know if it's also something you found in the past, that acoustical sealants generally used to be in the past, that she's used in the past, have high VOCs, and adhesive types that are waterproof do not comply with sealant credits. I don't know if that's something you've also addressed or dealt with.
Well, yes, I agree that many of the products before there were particular requirements were very high VOC, and it was not only the acoustical sealants, the adhesives, the floor coatings, the curing compounds. You know, you'd be choking if you were on the job site, or that acrid odor is really your mucous membrane curling up because there's you know, some sort of acid forming on it. But I think in every product category of which I'm aware, they have there are low VOC requirements. Even the sealants for water immersion, like the polysulfides, I believe can be formulated with VOC levels that meet both CHIPS and the Southern California or South Coast District requirements.
Okay. I'm going off that. There was a question. Is in California, do you need to specify any special paints or coatings to comply with that credit? Or can one even buy paint that does not comply?
Well, California is a very interesting situation, because I was told by, in theory, anything in the store that you can buy complies. But I was also told by a specifier that there's a $5,000 fine for an architect specifying products that don't comply. Well, that's just scared everybody, because there are 38 air managed quality districts, and your job might not be bid for 2 years. So the architect and spec writer put in their spec that when they submit the paints that they're proposing to use, that it comes with a current acceptance certificate. So there's I haven't seen that in any other places, but when you put some money in the line, it's going to get people's attention.
All right, and we are wrapping up the last few here. First one, when you mentioned enclosures, do you include the slab in that? One individual says, where they are, the AE considers enclosure including wall and roof only.
Well, the enclosure is also the basement walls and the floor slab. What we see, if anybody wants a copy, I'd be happy to make it available. A state agency that is really, they're commissioning the air barrier and the water tightness and air tightness of the envelope above grade. But if you're buildingscience.com, the Concord House, they did an analysis of the floor slab, the walls, roof. There's a $300,000 remodeling of a house. You get a new house in a great location, but now it's energy efficient, and so a complete analysis would cover all sides. But most of the exterior commissioning is walls and roof.
Okay, and then the last question we have here is, do you have any experience with bamboo flooring in high traffic areas, and how did that work?
Well, like any product, there's new growth bamboo, there's old growth bamboo, there's bamboo that if you get water on it, it'll turn black and wick in from the edges. So I think you need to look at the folks that are making sustainable wood, whether it's a nydri or a plyboo or many others. Make sure that it's already been used in the application that you're looking for. Bamboo does travel great distances often, but I'm told that with this recent climate change, you can also order your bamboo from New Jersey. So it's about making sure that the manufacturer supports the product for the use that you're planning on using it for. Great.
Well, then the last thing we had here was more a comment that want to pass on to you, Mark, and the group, and think about maybe doing this for a future presentation, was the question of, could you cover in more depth the role of a manufacturer's guide spec versus Division I requirements? And should there be any mention of a guide spec of Division I sustainable performance requirements? And I was just thinking, with September coming up as Spec-tember month, would this be something that might be an interest for us to have as a presentation in September?
Yes, it would be, because Division I is rarely written by a manufacturer. Manufacturers will refer back to it. A manufacturer can document what they make and the right way to specify it. But it's one of the legs of the stool is often Division I, and so thank you for the suggestion.
Great. Well, then with that, folks, looks like we are out of time and out of questions. So thank you again for coming. Thank you, Mark, for today's presentation. As you can see in the chat box, both Mark and my email are there, as well as a link to the Sustainability Practice Group's page on the website at csinet.org. If you have any additional questions, feel free to contact us or reach out to us. We look forward to see you in August at our next monthly meeting. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you as well, Matt. Thanks to CSI.